All right, guys, thinking of that outcome base, we're going to look at that in relation to controlling distance. And we're going to look at some common errors, especially if we're both empty hand, we don't have any weapon systems in play. How we control distance is very, very, very important. We have a saying that space is a friend of NASA and the defender. Okay, space is going to be the friend of the person who is defending or trying to get away or those kind of things. We want to be certain that we're not making space in a straight line backwards. In a gym setting, you can back up quite a ways, but once we get out in the street, you can't back up 4 or 5 feet before you're running into a car, maybe tripping over an object, a bike, some kind of curb, those kind of things. Another secondary issue is there could be another adversary behind you. Just because this guy's pressing forward doesn't mean one of his buddies is not behind you, or somebody becomes emboldened because you're backing up. Another thing that's happening when I back away is there's a natural psychological thing going on in this encounter. When you're in a combative encounter, you're communicating in a very true way, but you might not even be using words. So when I back up in a fight, it's not that I would never back up, but when I back up in a straight line under pressure, what that tells my adversary is what they're doing is working. They need to continue to pursue me and continue to put punches on me or try to take me down or whatever's going on. So I want to resist that urge to back up in a straight line. A final problem with that is as I back up, I'm still staying right in front of my opponent, and he's able to continue to throw shots at me. It doesn't take a lot of training to lengthen your shots, but it takes a ton of training to shorten them. So if Robert comes out, we're going to illustrate those. Once Robert begins to press, if I press straight backwards, even if I'm covering, Robert's staying on offense, there's no reason for him to change his behavior, and he's coming close. A lot of people will say, and we're talking about an empty hand environment, and the outcome we want is to try to control this and not get knocked out. But even if I had weapon systems on and I wanted to get to those weapon systems, if Robert presses me and I just back up, I'm never getting to the stuff on my belt. I'm going to get knocked out when I try to get that stuff out. Even if I were justified in using it, it's not going to be accessible to me. So I don't want to back up in a straight line. Robert's also getting stronger with each punch. And notice as he throws his shot, it's lengthening, no problem. I'm actually getting into that knockout range. So I want to resist that. The other thing we talked about is space being the front of NASA or the defender. If I want an angle on Robert, and I step to an angle all the way out here, all he does is turn his steps in the spine. He doesn't even have to turn them. At this range, if I step here, he can still hit me. Whereas if we ended up being close to each other and I step, I'm creating a very harsh angle. Let's do that again, Robert, and have you face the camera. So Robert's facing the camera, and I step here, I'm ending up at a very hard angle where Robert would have a hard time accessing or hurting me. But if we have this much distance and I step, Robert's still throwing that shot and still hitting me. So when we talk about using distance as a control mechanism fundamentally against an empty hand attack, we need to be certain how we are creating that distance and where we are going and how we are managing it. Managing distance in an empty hand encounter by going backwards is almost always a bad idea. And it's going to be super tough to create your angles and super tough to create a position of advantage if you're backing up.